I think they're very good quality so far. I am going to record testing whether or not they are waterproof and whether or not they are crush proof. But to be perfectly honest, I think they most certainly will be crush proof. They're very solid, not flimsy in any way at all. Tamper evident lids, so when they come to you, if you tighten them up fully, this section will clip onto this lip, the smaller of these two lips, and it clips over that, so that if then somebody opens it, it will do what you would expect that. So if that is a useful feature, it is provided, which I think is handy. So you know, if you've got perhaps medication or something that you want to be certain hasn't been tampered with. The lids tighten very firmly. Very firmly. You need to really give it some welly to tighten up. Inside there's like a groove that the top fits into around that edge, and I think it's sealing very well. If it turns out that it isn't, because that groove exists, some O-rings would seal the deal, he says, making a joke. So the inside length is 130mm. Inside measurement on the top, 21mm at the top. Now they do taper very slightly. I would say, as stated exactly in the description, probably by 1 or 2mm over the full length. So if you kind of squeeze things in, then they're going to get stuck. Where they've been moulded, there's a little sort of knob on top or on the bottom, which can easily be filed off, or a bit of sandpaper or something, but it is a bit rough. The rest of it in every way is completely smooth, and you know, they're good. They're very solidly put together. So I'm going to record the water test and the crush test separately, but while I'm still here, for batteries. So always carry spare batteries for my vaping equipment and for my main EDC torch flashlight. Few spare batteries always useful, and I can fit 2 CR123As and an 18350, and there's a bit of space left over, but what I've actually done is just stuck a bit of tissue paper in there to stop them rattling about. Incidentally, and I will say this purely for your benefit, if you're going to store batteries like this, I've put little bits of plastic in between to stop them from creating a circuit. It's advisable, that's all I'll say. You don't want batteries to be connected when they're not doing anything. UCO stormproof matches, that's over half a full box. The matches take up a fair amount of space in one of these tubes, but there's a good number for the fact that these are a backup. This is when everything else has gone wrong, and then plenty of space left over for the strikers. S-bit tablets, which unfortunately I couldn't fit as many as I was hoping. However, these are also last resort. This is why, to me, it's so important that they are protected, because if your last resort fails, you're really in trouble. So because they're last resort, it doesn't matter that there's only a few. This is EDC. This isn't, you know, a camping trip. This is literally in my jacket pocket all the time. Well, not my jacket pocket, but that's another story. So, and cotton wool, which obviously is absolutely fantastic for getting a fire going if it's dry. If it's not dry, then it's completely useless. So, storage of cotton wool, and a relatively simple system. This is actually the Kevlar thread, which is very strong. However, that's a different review. A little sort of fat O-ring to grab hold of, tied all the way through to a little plastic disc, and it means that I can pull it from the bottom. So I got plenty of reliable dry fire starting material. You can expect that there'll be a few bubbles come out of gaps inside the lid, you know, sort of in the thread and whatnot, but whether or not it gets into the tube is another matter. So if it's now bear in mind I'm pushing it under the water, but of course it wants to float. So, you know, this is perhaps slightly unrealistic, but you know, if it's very heavy and perhaps you drop it in a river or something, then you know, that this sort of depth is entirely possible. So I mean, if it's going to leak, it will have done so by now. And of course, I should have thought about this. It's wet on the outside. And I can already see that the tissue is, as far as I can tell, hopefully I don't transfer water into it as I take the lid off. So if I can dry my fingers. Completely successful. There isn't a single drop. Nothing has got to it. So they are indeed waterproof. Try crushing it in a vice and see what sort of pressure it will take. Now I'm being a little unfair, I think, because that ring at the end, this ridge, will take an awful lot of the brunt of any crushing force applied, but I'm not including it. I'm worried about it suddenly shattering. Jesus. No, that really is crush proof. That's a lot of force. It's getting to the point where I can't actually close it anymore. They really are crush proof. Take my word for it. That was a lot of pressure that I was just applying.